Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This will be my first video, so at first we're just going to do a brief introduction to who I am and what I'm planning on doing with this channel. So as you probably saw on when you clicked on the video, my name is Calvatron9000, and I will pretty much just be doing like a mix of lore and gameplay videos. We'll be doing some let's plays, and then I'll be throwing together some lore videos just to kind of make this a nerdy little channel. What we are playing here is we're playing Pillars of Eternity. It's a game that came out a little bit ago from Obsidian Entertainment. It was funded through crowdfunding, and they made probably, I think it was just over $4 million for this game. So what we will be doing in this is we will be playing a nature godlike druid, and we'll be playing on a normal difficulty. I'm not the best at this game. I've only have a few hours under my belt, and I don't want to make a complete fool of myself on my first video. Once I start getting viewers, if you guys have any video or any games you'd like me to play, or any stories of games or books that you would like me to make a lore video about, just simply put it in the comments. And at this early stage, I'll definitely be able to go and look over all of them. If enough people want a certain thing, I will definitely be doing that.
5 wagons grope blindly for the path on a starless night, their master glancing ever upward to the skies for assurance that he is on the right course. A dim lantern his only protection against the encroaching darkness. But the skies bring no comfort, shining no light, betraying no hint of what they know. The caravan carries travelers bound for the frontier hamlet of Gilded Vale, you among them, where a local lord has offered land and wealth to settlers from abroad looking for a fresh start. You have taken suddenly ill, sweating and shivering, and one of the other travelers signals for the caravan master to stop on your behalf. He pulls up just in time to avoid plowing into the trunk of a fallen tree that bars the way ahead. You will go no further tonight.
So let's see. So unfortunately, it looks like traveling to where we're trying to go, I got sick, and we got stuck in the road. So let's see. This is where we'll be creating our character. So we'll be doing a male godlike, nature godlike actually. So a cool thing about this game is everything you choose has a kind of, it impacts the rest of the game. Obsidian has always been very choice driven in how they make their games. Let's see, we'll be doing male godlike, nature godlike, but just a quick overview. There's humans, they get +1 to resolve, +1 to might. They have several choices. You can choose meadow, ocean, and savanna. And they all, humans, kind of unlike the other ones, all get the same specials. So each time you choose a sub-race, they get their specials. There's the fighting spirit for humans, once per counter, 5 seconds after being reduced below 50% endurance. Folk, the humans, or folk as they're generally called in the game, gain bonuses to accuracy and damage. Then there's the Amwa. They're kind of like the big brutes. Well, not necessarily brutes, but they're the big, tough, kind of orky type race. They get a +2 to might. They actually have 2 different choices. They have the Island Alma. They have the Arm to Teeth. All Island Alma gain an additional weapon set. And then the Coastal Alma, they get Towering Physique. Coastal Alma gain bonuses to defend against prone and stun effects. Next we have are the Dwarves. They get +2 might, -1 dexterity, and +1 constitution. They're kind of like the explorers of the world. They've settled a number of colonies all across the world, and they're more commonly found in the Deerwood and Valian Republics. Throughout the game, they have like these cool little, when a word is highlighted, you can hover over it, and it gives you a brief explanation of what it's talking about. So there's the Deerwood, are a colonial nation founded by settlers from the Adir Empire. Following a series of conflicts with Adir, the territory became independent in 2672 AI, and is now ruled by a duke who is elected by 7 earls that oversee its earldoms. Then there's the Valian Republics, there's the Adir Empire, there's also the these people come from somewhere known as the Ratoi Empire. And then the Dwarfs have 2 different, continuing on with the Dwarfs, they have 2 different sub-races, the Mountain Dwarfs, which have Hell and Hardy. Mountain Dwarfs have a bonus to defend against poison and disease attacks, and then the Boreal Dwarfs have Hunter's Instincts. Boreal Dwarfs gain plus 15 accuracy against any creature of the wilder or primordial types. And so next on we have our Elves, just kind of generic. They get plus 1 to Dexterity and Perception. But then their sub-races are the Wood Elves. Wood Elves have disadvantage against any enemies that is more than 4 meters away. Wood Elves gain bonuses to accuracy, deflection, and reflex. Next we have are the Pail Elves. Elemental Endurance is their special. All Pail Elves have increased burn and freeze damage reductions. Next we have are the Orlins. The Orlins are kind of like the hobbits that are kind of more animalistic. We have the Minor Threat for the Hearth Orlins. Minor Threat when attacking an enemy or any target that is also being targeted by a teammate. Hearth Orlins convert some of their hits into crits. Then we have the Wild Orlins. They have Defiant Resolve. After being subjected to a will attack, Wild Orlins temporarily gain a bonus to all defenses. And they have plus 1 to Resolve, minus 1 to Might, and plus 2 to Perception. And then next we have are the Godlike. The Godlike are kind of born from, or not kind of, but they're born from the different races. And when they are born, generally, depending on the culture, they can either be killed at birth or sometimes they are thought to be blessings, but you'll see a little later that with their different types, they can also be feared. They get a plus 1 to Dexterity and plus 1 to Intelligence. So what I'm planning on doing in this is playing as a nature godlike druid. So with the godlikes, they have 4 different types. They have the death godlike. They get Death Usher. When death godlike attack an enemy with 25% or less endurance, their damage is increased. Fire godlike. They have Battle Forged. When reduced below 50% endurance, fire godlike glow like metal, and a forge, gaining damage reduction and doing a small amount of fire damage to any creature who hits them in melee. Next we have is the Moon Godlike. They have Silver Tide. Every encounter when reduced below 75%, 50%, and 25% endurance, Moon Godlike generate waves of healing moonlight that restore endurance to them and their allies. And then last we have the Nature Godlike, which have the Wellspring of Life special, which grants a bonus to Might, Constitution, and Dexterity when endurance is below 50%. So, a cool thing with the Godlike is you can choose what their parent race was, and it kind of just affects how they look. I think we will be doing a Elf Godlike just to kind of play into their nature role. In Pillars of Eternity, there are multiple classes. We have the Barbarian, Paladin, Chanter, Priest, Cipher, Ranger, Druid, Rogue, Fighter, Wizard, and Monk. A brief description: Barbarians, kind of just like your crazy berserkers that go in, to a fight and just thoroughly enjoy slaughtering everyone they can. We have the Paladins. They're kind of the, not necessarily righteous, but the zealot warriors of kind of just an idea. There's some that worship gods. There's some that are culture bound. They devote themselves to ways of life, god, ruler, pretty much any way that you can have a fanatical group, they will be there. Barbarians, to go back to them, they have a carnage and +2 and to athletics and +1 to survival. Paladins have their starting abilities faith and conviction, and they have +2 to athletics and +1 to lore. Chanters, they are actually a very intriguing class. They get their powers through kind of just saying magical phrases and telling stories while in combat. And then as they build up, they eventually get to a point where they can use an invocation, which is like a super more powerful effect that kind of causes a number of things to happen, but that can only be said once the required number of phrases have been chanted. They get a +2 to lore and a +1 to mechanics. Next we have are the priests, just generic. They worship the different deities and they practice religious magic. They get holy radiance, which generates a modest amount of endurance, and then they have spells. Then they get a +1 to athletics and +2 to lore. Next we have are the Ciphers. They're kind of like the telepaths, and they can affect the soul. As you will notice throughout the game, or if you've played it yourself, the game itself tends to focus really heavily on the soul. Through the story, you find out that when someone dies, their soul goes into the Great Wheel, and then they get reborn as pretty much anything. They can be reborn as an animal, as another human, elf, dwarf, doesn't really matter. Everyone's soul is the same. So you get reborn as anyone else. The Ciphers play very heavily on that. They can read your mind. They can speak to you through that. They empower their weapon through a soul whip, or their physical attacks that are empowered through a soul whip, which builds their focus, which allows them to cast their powers. They have +1 to stealth, +1 to lore, and +1 to mechanics. Next we have is the ranger, just your generic ranger character. One cool thing about them is they do have a animal companion that you get to kind of keep as your pet. It'll help you in fights, and can be a scout, guides, stuff like that. Let's see. We have a +1 to stealth and +2 to survival for the ranger. Next we have the druid. This will be the class that we will be playing. They're the nature magic. They can shapeshift, stuff like that. Their actual starting ability is the shapeshift, which allows them to shapeshift into an animal form. Then they have some spells that they can use as well. They get +1 to lore and +2 to survival. Next we have our rogues. These are kind of like the assassins and thieves who are good at stealth and lockpicking, stuff like that. They get a +1 to stealth and +2 to mechanics. Next we have is the fighter. Fighters are kind of just like what you would expect. They're your knights. They go in with a shield and sword swinging. They get +1 to athletics, +1 to lore, and +1 to survival. Next we have is the wizard. These are the generic mages. They cast magic, stuff like that, but they do kind of go off of the one thing that's throughout most of these spellcasters, are primarily the wizard, druid, and priest, is they can only use their spells a limited number of times in between rests, which kind of harkens back to the Dungeons and Dragons days. But as you level up, you will be able to start using the weaker spells per combat instead of per rest, which is kind of cool. The wizards get a +1 or +2 to lore and +1 to mechanics. Next we have is the monk. The monks are kind of like the martial arts experts. They generally prefer to fight with their hands, but you can have them have a weapon. They get +1 to stealth, +1 to athletics, and +1 to survival. So, as I said earlier, we'll be doing a druid. This is where we kind of choose what we want to be able to shapeshift into. Let's see what each one does. Let's see. If we do the bear, it draws upon the druid's natural connection to the bear, temporarily allowing him to assume the form. The bear's spirit shift has a high damage reduction and can invoke a terrifying roar. We have the boar, draws upon the druid's natural connection to the boar, temporarily allowing him to assume that form. The boar's spirit shift regenerates lost endurance and inflicts damage over time with its melee attacks. Next we have is the cat. It temporarily allows him to shapeshift into a cat form, has a natural fast attack, and can burst into even faster attacks for short periods of time. Then we have the stag. The stag spirit shift has higher defenses and can attack groups of enemies with its melee carnage attack. And finally we have the wolf form. The wolf spirit shift moves quickly and has an attack that can knock enemies prone. Let's see. I think we're going to do the stag one. That one looks pretty fun. So this is where we are going to be choosing our stats, our attributes. I'm not the best at min-maxing, so I'm not going to really do that. But what I will be doing is... your bite represents your character's physical and spiritual strengths. So for wizards, priests, druids, and all that, it's very something you want to do because it does increase your spell strength. It's very highly recommended for druids, so I'm just going to put it up a little. Let's do 15. Constitution is the combination of the character's overall health and stamina. Although it is not used much in interaction, it is sometimes checked to withstand pain or endure a physical taxing ordeal. In combat, it affects maximum health and endurance and contributes to the fortitude. So with health and endurance, they're two different forms. The health is your long-term damage, and it only regains through rest and certain talents. And your endurance is your short-term survivability. So when your endurance gets all the way down to 0, your character gets knocked out. And if you're... But it's kind of just a little different with how the health works in most games. The endurance is very short term. It can get down to 0, your character gets knocked out. Health is your long term, and when a character's health reaches 0, they will either be maimed or killed depending on game settings. A maimed character who is reduced to 0 health will always be killed regardless of settings. Unlike endurance, a character's health does not get restored after combat, but characters have much larger health values than endurance values. Then we have dexterity. Dexterity is an abstraction of a character's hand-eye coordination, balance, and overall grace. Perception represents a character's senses as well as their instinctive ability to pick up on details in interactions. It can also be used to catch someone in a lie, to make an observant comment about their appearance, or to notice something happening in the background. In combat, it contributes to accuracy, the reflex damage, and grants a bonus to interrupt. Next we have is intellect. Intellect represents a character's logic and reasoning capabilities, interactions. It can be useful for deduction, sudden realizations, or problem solving. And then we have the resolve. Resolve reflects the character's internal drive, determination, fearlessness, and emotional intensity they can project to others. So our two main things that are put for us is Might, Intellect, and then Resolve is kind of recommended for Druids, but these two are the main things you want to focus on. So I will be pumping both those up to 15, and then I will be pumping Resolve up as well. Let's actually put one in there, and I'm actually going to lower this down to 9 and put Perception up to 13, just because I like having a lot of options in conversation. So we're good there. So this is where we'll be able to choose where we come from. So each place gives you an additional stat that you can choose. So if we choose a deer, we'll get +1 to Resolve. The Dead Fire Archipelago. Oh my gosh. Has +1 to Dexterity. The Examital Plains have +1 to Resolve. Old Valia has +1 to Intellect. Raute has +1 to Constitution. The Living Lands have +1 to Might, and the White That Went has a +1 to Perception. So I think we will do either the Living Lands or Old Valia. Old Valia is now currently run with the Empire. So let's see. We'll do +1 to Might. Next is our background. We can be a colonist, drifter, explorer, hunter, laborer, mercenary, merchant, or scientist. Let's see. +2 to survival. +1 to stealth and mechanics. +1 to stealth and survival, lore and survival. Athletics. Let's do lore mechanics. Let's do this one. So these will be kind of our colors on what we wear will look like. We're doing, it's not really game changing in any way, but we can do kind of nature colors, green and brown, and then the godlike's head. Let's do the first one. Portraits. These are here are. It's a lot of different choices. Let's do. A lot of different options, but not very many godlike options. So many of them. Let's do. That's creepy. Let's do this one. Next, we have our different.
Hey there.
Now I am the leader of the group. Ah!
Keeping quiet.
So we will be doing kind of a more mystical person. He's going to be very connected to his spirit and stuff like that. At least that's going to be our role-playing element. So we'll be doing mystic.
I shall lead us. Sharp eyes and keen ears.
Oh?
Yeah. And then her name is going to be Calvatron. So there we go. Let's see. So this is the Gilded Veil. Or not the Gilded Veil, this is just a path to Gilded Veil where we're heading. Let's see. Caravan Master Odema. The Caravan Master finishes addressing the group, his blushy red mustache and sagging jowls quivering as if for emphasis.
Everybody stays close to the wagons, got it? Stay out of the woods, and beasts take you if you were planning a stroll through those ruins up there.
He nods toward a looming black mass on the hillside.
Whole area's crawling with hut-dwelling types who'd be happy to stick an axe in you for trespassing. So mind that you don't track mud on their sacred blazing rocks. Tonight, everybody stays put, and in the morning we'll get the path cleared. Gilded Vale's less than a day out. Understood?
At last, the caravan master turns to you, frowning as he looks you over.
Touch of the rumbling rot, could be. There's a stinging beetle round here, carries it. You'll be fine once it passes your innards. Unless you don't drink water, course. Which case you'll be dead in a day.
Oh, that's not good.
There's a berry grows in these parts, small and pink, called a springberry. About the size of a fingernail. Give you cramps if you eat it, but the frontiersmen make a tea from it. Calms the insides. Should get you through the night. You might check around, see if you can find some. Meanwhile, I'll see if we can scare you up some water. I know you want to hunt before it gets much darker, but see about refilling our water first. Got a sick one here.
He nods in your direction. Sparfell nods and slides the warm bow over his shoulder. So let's see. Where would I find these berries?
They grow on a bush that's common round here, kind of funny looking. You'll know it when you see it. Doubt you'd have to go far off the road to find one.
What are those
Nothing you
ruins?
won't see on half the hills of Air Glonfoth. Money to be made selling their knickknacks in Defiance Bay if you don't mind getting stuck with Glonfoth and arrows now and again. They didn't build them, but I'll be the effigy if they don't watch them like a mother bear. Of course, all the ones around here have been ransacked 10 times over. Got nothing left worth half a pawn, so I hear.
Let's see. Who did build these ruins?
Got different names for them. Settlers called them Ingwithans. Nobody that liked them enough to stop them becoming ruins, tell you that much. Not if you hurry about your business. And not if the weather holds up.
There's concern in his tone, but he does not elaborate. Ooh. What kind of weather do they get
This
out
time
here?
of year, rain mostly, and wind. But there's a different kind of wind out here time to time. Locals call it a beawick, born out of the ether, the spirit's path. Never seen it myself, never care to.
What are these huge rocks coming out of the ground?
They don't got Audra where you come from? Well, it just grows up out of the ground like this. Goes deep like tree roots. Some of it all the way to the heart of the world, you believe the stories. It's more like a shell than a proper rock. Easier to work if you're a mason. Got all kinds of strange properties. Seems to have some kind of life of its own. Dies if it gets dug up. Loses its luster. Folks think it probably grew at one point or another, but not these days. The soul butchers in Defiance Bay use it for different things. I've heard tell it can hold a man's soul, but I don't care to see it. Got enough to worry about without seeing something like that. Hold on. Take someone with you. I know you're not some helpless tenderfoot, not like most of this lot. But you drop dead, I don't want to be looking for the body. Got a schedule to keep.
He scans over the travelers, resting his eyes at length on a sturdy, armor-clad woman who has spent the journey's night sleeping on uneven ground without blanket or pillow.
Kalisha. Kalisha!
The woman looks up on her own time.
He needs to find some springberries. Watch that he doesn't drop dead.
No promises.
What kind of guide says something like that?
She's not very nice.
Kind you can afford.
Don't listen to her. You're in good hands. And I pay too well, if anything. Off with you. Hayadin should have supplies. See that you're equipped before you head out. We're in harsh country. Get your berries and hurry back. And if you get so much as a tickle of wind, you drop everything and you run. Something in the air tonight. If it's a beawick, we'll shelter in the ruins. Hut dwellers be damned.
You heard the man. Let's get going before you keel over.
So, let's see.
Certainly.
Let's see, I've only really ever played as the wizard class
Yes.
in this, so let's look over our spells real quick. I got a little pig that I can have as my pet. It's this ring, Blonde's Pledge. Grants Blonde's Pledge to the rest. What is Blonde's Pledge? Oh. So this is a healing ring that I will be putting on. Anything else for us? Nope.
Certainly.
Let's see, we are looking for some berries, but let's talk to the merchant first. Hyoden. You see a man wearing simple but mostly neat clothes. He's transfixed, however, by a ragged tear in the seam of his tunic.
Brought a whole wagon full of goods to sell, but not enough shirts for the road.
He scratches one cheek with his knuckles. It's covered with uneven stubble, as if he hasn't quite gotten used to shaving on the road.
Say, is there anything you need? I've got some basic traveling supplies for sale if you'd like to take a look.
Sure, let's see what you've got. Let's see. Anything interesting? We don't have enough money for any of that. Or for that. Any weapons? Maybe buy a weapon. I don't know what kind of weapon I have. Let's see, a sword and shield. Okay.
Something else you need? I'm a trader, originally from the Adir Empire, but I've been trying to establish new business out here. Life on the road has brought some unexpected challenges, to be sure. And I'm sure you've noticed how prickly the locals can be. But we're here to make the most of things, right?
Let's say... with an outlook like that, I'm sure you'll do well. Let's see. So let's get going.
Certainly.
It's not really. Actually, let's buy some lockpicks from him.
Something else you need?
Let's do that. Trade. Oh, can't trade for 3. We can take 2 of those. So let's see. We're gonna go over here. Kind of like just exploring everywhere, looking around. If you hold down shift, if there's anything to pick up, we can definitely do it.
Let's check by those outcroppings.
Wolf over here. First fights. I don't quite want to use my abilities yet. These just won't stop going away. Oh my gosh. Their tutorials are a little obnoxious at times. That was a lot easier than I was expecting. Let's look over here. Dead carcass.
This is it.
Berries. Let's see. Scientists. You're some kind of scientist, the way I hear it. I've learned to harness it to solve crimes. There's a lot of demand for substances that alter the mind. A little science goes a long way in meeting that demand. Damn, let's do some drugs over here. I spent a long time pursuing knowledge promised by alchemy, or that isn't your business. Let's do, since we're doing the mystic type, I spent a long time pursuing knowledge promised by alchemy. Yeah, how is it you happened to come here? Alchemy is dangerous. I was nearly killed in an accident. My teacher was a fraud who cheated people out of their hard-earned money. I found it to be limited. Its secrets weren't the secrets I wanted answers to. But that isn't your business. Let's do, as the mystic type, we're going to do 3 again. Some things just aren't in the stars, and there's no changing it. Makes you wonder if the gods like putting us in situations that can't be resolved, just to see what we do. Kaleska breathes in her surroundings. It's been a long time since I've been this way, but I always did like it. Lord Raedric's offer makes a girl think. I'll give him that. You here to settle like the rest of the lot? It's a hard offer to pass up. No, I'm just passing through, or I hadn't given it much thought. Let's do... I haven't given... no, I'm just passing through. That's usually the case with the big city just a little ways further up the same road. Where are you headed? Nowhere special, just putting as much time and distance between me and my old life as I possibly can. I'm going to continue onto the city just to see where that takes me. I'll probably wander for a time somewhere I can make some money, or I have no idea what I'm going to do next. I'll probably wander for a while. I can't judge you for that. It's been half my life. Just watch yourself. You get too far off the beaten path. These lands are wild in more ways than one. Anyway, I'm wasting time here. Odema will give me an earful. Just be on our way. Let's be on our way. Oh my gosh, I cannot read right now. I do apologize about that. Let's see. Our options are: why are you here? Tell me about yourself. What can you tell me about Deerwood? Why are you here? Kaliska sighs unevenly. Her eyes search the ground at her feet. My sister moved out here some time back. She sent me a letter. She seemed worried, but that's how she always is. This time, though, she asked me to come out, and that's got me a little worried. I haven't seen her in ages. Been doing guide work in Examitil, but I'd do anything for her. She's a much better woman than me, so I'm here, and we'll see. Odema I've worked with before. He doesn't usually drive a route this way, but he's doing it for me. Tell me about yourself. I've got simple needs. I like open skies, and far horizons. I find work that lets me live that way. My family wanders too. We started in Deerwood, but my parents ended up in the Living Lands. I've gotten a brother in Ratoy and another in Adir. My sister in Gilded Vale. She's the only real homebody. What can you tell me about Deerwood? I'm not much for history, but from what I know, it used to be part of the Adir Empire, broke off after a war some years back. The locals here are feisty, and that's how they like it. I've been out of touch, but I've been hearing weird kinds of things about it lately. People having trouble giving birth, I guess. A lot of them been going on for years now, but somehow it's getting worse. With an uneasy tremor in her voice, she adds, I'll have to ask my sister more about it. Alright, let's get back to camp. You know, I wouldn't hold my breath that Sparfeld's getting you water anytime soon. He does what he feels like, when he feels like it. We should check up on him first. Slap him around a little. Stream's just down that way. Come on, let's get you your water. So at this point we are going to be ending, as we are just over 38 minutes into the video. If you can please comment, let me know what I'm doing wrong, let me do what I'm doing right, and just give me some advice. I would greatly appreciate it. If you have any suggestions on what I should do next after I go through this playthrough, please let me know. My plans on the future is to do some Warhammer 40k lore videos along with some Warhammer Fantasy, maybe some Age of Sigmar. I might even be doing some Pillars of Eternity lore. I've tried looking and there's not really anything out there on YouTube at the moment that can really be described as a Pillars of Eternity lore. Pretty much, usually if I'm going to be doing a gaming video of it, I'll probably be doing a lore video on it as well. And if you liked it, don't forget to hit that like button, hit subscribe, leave a comment again of anything that you suggest I should do, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.